I've been getting rid of a number of my books lately. I have physical room for them, but I wonder if they make sense anymore for today. Many of these are, I think you could classify as deep, and these careful analyses of some important part of culture, architecture, art, and philosophy have always needed books to describe and explain some of their mysteries. And this was the job of theory, to create a larger kind of explanation that sits directly over, or maybe if you like even under, some sort of physical world action, some kind of human activity, that sort of thing. That's theory. I mean, if you think about it, that layer of explanation has been with us a long time. Thousands of years ago, we already had this kind of world of theory, if you like. Back then, it was called religion, right? So we had the physical world, and then an explanatory model of the unseen world on top of it called religion, still with us. So we had the physical world, and then something to explain it on top of that. And now, when religions become obsolete, then we have another time that looks back on that religion, but it doesn't call it religion, it calls it mythology. So it's one theory to explain another theory that was explaining the physical world. So it just goes on and on. Basically, the idea of the unseen world explaining something in the visible world is, I think, what I'm kind of getting at. In the Dark Ages, we had alchemy, which, if you think about it, was really all about trying to reverse engineer metals and chemicals and even people in the world, either transforming lead into gold, or a normal world into an enlightened world, or a normal person into a person of pure spirit. Right? This is what alchemy was trying to do. So it was both things. It was sort of a physical piece, but it was also imposing on that physical study this sort of otherworldly set of principles that were considered very important. Once the mythology was abandoned, alchemy became narrowed down into a kind of lesser version of itself. It was basically just now called chemistry. So that shift from alchemy to chemistry removed all of the sort of theory about otherworldly causes and other pieces of the unseen, and only kept the rules of the universe that could be explained by physical phenomena in a systematic way, right? So gone, really, essentially, were the mysteries of the soul, right? The universe of God. It was really just enough to study a smaller piece of this. The world that we were going to study at that point no longer involved any kind of interest in the spirit, no interest in sort of anything other than what physical phenomena were giving us. And the inner self would now have to wait for a long time. In fact, to about 1900, when with psychoanalysis, the study of weird emotional behavior in women was called hysteria, and it was found to have a physical cause. The sudden fits of crying, depressive silence, difficulty with adapting to normal circumstances of the world. There was a weird behavior that could not be explained in any normal way. And these reactions eventually were found to be caused by another unseen dimension, or maybe two, actually. In one of these, the idea was that emotional hardships were somehow being repressed, and they were being kept in a kind of subconscious vault that, with pressure, eventually would find abnormal ways out in odd behavior, language, and even dreams. The other was the larger kind of social world, in which you could say that it was found convenient to repress and to hold back opportunities and freedoms, rights, liberties, if you like, for women, but was also creating new, amazing opportunities for men, businessmen, to become richer and more powerful than normal men had ever been before. And so Sigmund Freud's own theory about hidden kinds of behavior became, if you like, maybe a kind of religion for science in its own way. Let's not forget he died in 1945. So in a 45-year period, Freud gave to light an orientation to the world based on a study of the subconscious that had never existed before. And it led to, many other kinds of important discoveries about, the inner self and society. That was the century, if you like, of subconscious study, and spawned the work of important other thinkers too, like Carl Jung. I guess, if you like, the second thing that it gave the world was a sort of inspiration for more than 100 other great minds to come up with all their own theoretical explanations and schemas for physical behavior. I think it's fair to say that never has so much been said about the subconscious as it was in the 20th century. What happened to all of this world of explanation, the death of Freud, Jung, and all the others? I think that as with alchemy becoming chemistry centuries earlier, psychology turned to the physical world and avoided all kinds of esoteric and mysterious theories. It wasn't too long before psychoanalysis was considered a kind of witchcraft, because it couldn't be measured, It was the United States, Americans, ever the practical ones in the party, began to propose systematic theories of the self. But these, I think, seemed scientific because they looked only at, maybe logical and maybe measurable aspects, of behavior and thinking. B.F. Skinner, the father, really, of behaviorism in the modern sense, in the 1950s came up with ways to control behavior of small animals as a way of kind of showing that using a small stimulus like food or pain, if delivered at the right moment under the right conditions, you could get anybody to do almost anything. I remember at Harvard when I was a student, he showed us this film where he had these pigeons, and he gave them, they pressed a food bar or whatever, and they got their little food pellet or whatever it is that they were being fed. And they had already been trained that when they were given a certain kind of, conditioning, they would operate. Hence the name operant conditioning. And then this little ball would come down to the specially designed bowling alley, and the pigeons would bowl. And it was pretty unbelievable, Certainly, I thought the weirdest bowling scenes ever filmed were those probably in The Big Lebowski, but this made The Big Lebowski seem very normal. It seemed like bowling for dollars by comparison. Later, other theories arose and replaced those. Things like cognitive psychology and social psychology, they ended up studying the relationship between language and action. Sometimes these theories would have beautifully logical diagrams as maps to our own ways of thinking, acting, speaking, etc. I think that brings us to about maybe 1990s. And I think around the year 2000, by the year 2000, things like cognitive psychology had really pretty much died out. They were replaced by other sets of theories as well that were in turn even more reductive, even more physically based. So what happened to all these cognitive psychology and, what happened to behaviorism? What happened to all of these studies, all these systems? Forget about the subconscious, collective unconscious, or anything like this. At this point, we had, kind of diagrams of things that were very reductive. But in addition to everything else, then we now had these theories that only explained certain kinds of limited behavior. And even that became even more limited. These religions became mythologies for their own part. So today, if women are hysterical, or men, rather than being sort of given a long course of psychoanalysis, possibly lasting years, They're instead given a prescription drug that alters this brain chemistry a little bit by keeping the happy connections from being lost. All these forms of psychology, became largely replaced by one other field called cognitive science. And fascinating for me because cognitive science is like a mix between biology and chemistry, right? So it studies the brain alone, only the brain, and it observes, how small changes inside the brain can lead to changes in behavior, changes in mood, changes in action, changes in language, changes in virtually everything. So if you like maybe the physical key, the nucleus was now being turned only around the brain itself. As with science, the tools of technology have also maybe replaced a lot of extraordinary experience. What's been lost is that the idea that taking an alternative, if you like, has any real meaning. Because if we say we've discovered religion, or that we are sort of undergoing psychoanalysis, etc., that just doesn't have the same power as someone saying, well, I've taken this pill and it's really changed my way of thinking. And I'm like, oh, you got the latest science with him, And as with science, the tools of technology have done the same thing. They've reduced the time that it takes to get to a point of, if not insight, at least satisfaction. Instead of figuring out where your friends are, you can use technology to find out where they've been. Use social media to find out what they're doing and what they're talking about, But have you noticed something? We used two words there kind of simultaneously to mean almost the exact same thing. One was the word insight, which, what does that mean? Knowledge is one thing, but insight is knowledge or understanding of something beyond the obvious. And on the other hand, terms like satisfaction really refer to a feeling of intimate reward or complacency with something. So, maybe if you like, even immediate reward. Satisfaction doesn't mean I had satisfaction over 30 years. Satisfaction means I was hungry, I ate my meal right away, my happy meal, my quick meal, my meal on the go, and I felt satisfaction, That's what it is. Satisfaction is the sort of, the release of whatever is holding back the pleasure of some impulse. That's what satisfaction is, Insight is what people look for when maybe they're curious and even perhaps frustrated about something profound. Religious insight, for example, is the search of a lifetime for some people. Insight is not just knowing, it's also knowing why. And this deeper way of knowledge takes much longer to obtain. Without having the information, let's say, that somebody needed about why he might be unhappy, he could have written a long and beautiful poem or a classic novel, let's just say, trying to work out why this condition of not knowing over many years has led him to this search. Maybe after so many years, in the end, he reaches a certain insight where he's completely aware that the question he set out for wasn't important. It was only finding meaning that eventually was important. Maybe the search for insight began as a search for satisfaction, and not meeting the satisfaction, you had to eventually find yourself in the hands of fate, and then you have insight about that. So for me, maybe that's the final horizon for where you can go in a search for insight. It takes a lot to do a kind of long search. You might probably have to put up with not knowing and not being in control of something, maybe not even being in touch for a long time. You might have 18 missing years in temples and searching for something that's important to you, looking for some kind of happiness or meaning. But those struggles always bring rewards one way or the other, because nothing is more capable of changing the world and ourselves like patient steadiness, particularly when there is no immediate reward in sight. And that's the ironic thing, that the word insight is a kind of reference to a vision of something at a time when maybe there was nothing in sight. Now, if a sense of reward can come sooner, on the other hand, as in the example that I gave earlier, it can come in a moment, through immediate satisfaction, rather than maybe longer term pain and a journey of sorts, then change may never be possible. I mean, if we go from moment to moment, right, and the modern world can give us bits and bytes of satisfaction, right? And by the way, now we're in a world, as I say, where theories and mythologies of our inner selves have been replaced by products of brain chemistry and science, the immediate, as it were. So in a way, what chance is there really for insight now that we're looking for satisfaction? That's why, in part, I'm getting rid of these books. The time of theory has passed for now. And I don't know, maybe the age of immediate satisfaction that's been with us for 20 years or more, it still has no sign of lessening. But I think I'm also letting go of these books because their spirit is already in me. I'm with their immediate world. I understand technology. I earned my advanced degrees a while ago, and I still program computers every single day if I need to arrange information for me and slice and dice it the way that I need it. But I also think that my inner self is very much still the theorist, the alchemist, the believer in the unseen, the world of insight that I hope maybe will return one day again. And so we can have these wonderful novels and poems and things about something other than immediate satisfaction. I think we have to live with both worlds. We can't just live in the immediate sense. And we can't go back any longer and pretend by just reading our books and these ideas about worlds that no longer exist. The worlds of even the 1950s, the movies, Paris, etc. I think those worlds are gone, man. So you have to conceptualize that bridge between both. The conceptualist, I think, at least in me, is in both worlds. And I think that's, not only is it the only place to be, realistically, but it might be the best place to be.